Cloud. Okay. What was it? It was last month, I think, where I don't know, there was something going on around here weather-wise because I had a couple of little power burps here at home and lost connection momentarily. So, but fortunately, the event was able to go on without me. So that's most encouraging. Okay. What are we at? We have 30 participants. Everybody say hi to everybody else. Get to know everybody.
Yeah.
And if everybody, let's recording. All right, so I am going to now ready to start the slideshow, and we will kick this thing off. Where wait, here's screen. We go. This is the one I want here. One of my discoveries with Zoom is that I can, when I share a screen, the fact that I might change screens on my computer doesn't mean that one's going to be shared with you. So, all right. So if you got questions, you can send them through chat, and Spencer and I will try to keep track of that, or you can just unmute and yell at us. Okay, so it's the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in 2021 forecast, Santa Monica Astrology Zoom Meetup, December 13th, 2020 at 12 p.m. Spencer Grendel at grendel1@yahoo.com, and me, Jim Schultz, at jimmyyeti@hotmail.com. So now you got all that fun stuff. Here's some of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to get this out of my way so I can. Here we go. We're going to start with the November 30th lunar eclipse, because eclipse is coming here. Then we're going to talk about tomorrow's total eclipse, and of course tomorrow is also the day the Electoral College votes. Got bi-wheel charts with the eclipse and Trump, Biden, and Harris, so we can take a quick look at how the eclipse might be affecting them. We're going to look at the winter solstice, which of course is how or where many astrologers use mundane-wise. That's where they will start look at the year ahead. And then we're also going to look at the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction right after the solstice. And then we're going to look at some other charts to look at. We have the Jupiter square Uranus. We have inauguration day. We have first Saturn Uranus square.
Oh, that's kind of hopeful.
Yeah, Jupiter's going to square Uranus once. Saturn and Uranus will make 3 squares. May 1st, transiting Neptune will oppose the United States natal Neptune for the first of 3 times. And then we've got 4 eclipses coming up in 21. Total lunar eclipse on May 26th, solar on June 10th, partial lunar on November 19th, and another total solar eclipse on December 3rd. And then I've got one slide that's got dual wheels that shows you the picture for December 31st at 11:59 p.m. for 2020 and for 2021 as a comparison. I know most probably don't look at that, but I mean, it's the end of our calendar year. It's how most people think in terms from time-wise. So I thought we could look at those. Are we ready? Here we go. Okay. Now I gotta somewhere over here. Yin, 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 yin. Hang on, here we go. I'll figure out how to get this done. Let's see, do we have anybody in the waiting room? Hang on. Got people in the waiting room, and let's get them in here. Okay, so This is our first chart. It's the lunar eclipse we had on November 30th. 8 Gemini 38, 8 Sag 38. Anybody have anything interesting to report about the from the eclipse? Any stories for us to tell?
It's right on my Mars.
On your Mars. Wow. How was that for you?
I didn't notice anything. So what it says, but
Well, that's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, nothing bad happened. So.
Well, that's good. As long as nothing bad happens, I guess it's good.
I had a really good eclipse. I had a lot of things happen. Of course, it was conjunct my Uranus. So I had a lot of good things happen. A lot of doors open for me. I had someone take an interest in a child's book I wrote. But on the whole, I had a very good day on that eclipse.
Yeah, I did too. I got a great test result back. Yay.
Yay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times they use scare tactics when it comes to eclipses, but a lot of times, and most of the stories we hear are actually pretty good things with for most people, if they have anything to report at all. Yeah, I can't think of anything that particular that happened. I don't really remember that day.
Well, I'd like to suggest one other thing, that we have a beginning of a consciousness aspect here. We have Gemini moon, which is, Gemini is, of course, we like to say that it's ruled by Mercury, and it has this whole interest in kind of a Catholic approach to knowledge in the smallest sense. It's great curiosity, a lot knowing about a lot of people and a lot of situations. And you have that opposed to the consciousness of Sagittarius, which is a huge consciousness, bicultural, high law, priestess, that whole concept. So we have the beginning here of something that we're going to see more of in the eclipse, that the state of consciousness is going to be one of the huge issues that we're going to go into. Is this kind of consider this as the kickoff of the football game that's going to be taking place now as we go through all of the rest of these slides, that this is an issue that we have communication issues. We have issues of understanding each other within the silos in which we live, or what the tribalism that we've got going. I think the whole concept of communication here is really introduced with this. That's my 2 cents.
November 30. Should I go ahead?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is Donald Trump a Gemini, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's born. He's the 14th, and Mike Pence is June 7th. So,
yeah,
yeah, that eclipse wasn't that close to either one of them.
Oh wow, so they're both Geminis? I didn't know
Yes.
that. Mike Pence was a Gemini too.
Yeah, it's the first pair of. I think it's the first time we've had a president and vice president elected that were from the same sign of the zodiac.
Yeah.
So is Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, and so is the whatever he is in China. They're all Geminis.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very dear friend
Yeah.
who's a triple Gemini.
Oh wow.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
But he's a lovely, warm person and very, very bright.
So Gemini sun, moon, and rising. Is that what it is? Triple
Yeah.
Gemini?
Yes.
Queen Victoria was a triple Gemini.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I can
Those
add
are-
a bit
those are
of
rare.
Trump news here. That day,
Can I say
Trump lost 134,000 Twitter followers, but Biden gained over 1 million.
On November 30th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
I've been keeping a journal. Yes. This was also when the crowds protested at this bar where the guy refused to follow the protocols, the health protocols.
No.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I
Yes,
just want to say that I had, not that day, but I had a very interesting within about a week, a very interesting experience. My Venus is on 7 degrees Sagittarius. I have Gemini rising. My Sun is 4 degrees Scorpio, so that's I have a lot of synchronicity with this day. And what I noticed was within a week, a very like realizing how important it is, or experiencing how important it is to connect with the earth, the physical realm, with love. Like everything that we do, if we do it with a consciousness of love and enjoyment of every single thing. I mean, I knew this as a concept and I've been feeling it more and more, but it was a very tactile experience of how important it is to really feel the beauty and sacredness of everything that we have, and how we can't have a successful life unless we do it. This has happened a week. It's a very powerful experience the Saturday after this day. So I don't know if it has anything to do with that, but just want to mention.
You're talking about on the 5th of December?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm noticing this day was, a lot of it is on my chart.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's what people probably have tended to overlook is that during this difficult time when with the lockdown and everything, is that it is important you can at least go outside, get a little fresh air, get some sunshine, connect again with the earth and nature, because it can help to kind of wash away a lot of. Go hug a tree. The trees can help. They'll
I do
they'll
that
pull out of that.
every
Yeah.
The
I
trees
do
will
that
pull
every
that
morning.
negative. If you allow them, they will pull that negative stuff out and
Yeah.
send it into the earth for purification. Okay.
Yeah. I find going to nature parks pretty helpful for that too. Just going out and like enjoying the nature and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we don't want to never overlook the earth, which interestingly enough, it's like, it's kind of like the missing element in the air fire aspect that's going on now with the nodes, especially since they just came out of earth and water. Okay, so here's the total solar eclipse for tomorrow.
Can I add one thing to November 30th?
Yeah.
That's my birthday, November 30th, 1973. I'm not a really good chart reader, so I can't tell you exactly on his chart how that affected, but I was trying to watch his changes and what was going on for him that day and around that day.
How did he seem to react in any unusual way or anything?
He seems to be acting a little warmer to me.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good thing. I have no idea if it's a chart thing or a eclipse thing or whatever, but
yeah, see, if November 30th is his birthday, then the eclipse would have been pretty close to his sun. It basically would have been a solar return for him as well.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do see some changes in him.
Yeah, so you have that sun-moon opposition, reconnecting with the mother, the moon.
Can I just make a note that these were the November 30th one and this one are south node eclipses. So they're cleaning out eclipses. We're getting rid of those things that are no longer valid for us. And that could be, I mean, especially since it was mentioned that Trump lost some Twitter followers and Biden gained some, and this is communication, knowledge, that kind of thing. So maybe cleaning that out and transferring that around.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to say something about this. That 23rd degree of Sag is on Trump's moon in the 4th house, opposing his sun and his north node, and it's all square Neptune. And that's why we're seeing this delusion that he's won, that he keeps pushing. I think it's also affecting the American people in the same way, because the Neptune is squaring something in the U.S. chart too, I think.
Yeah. There is this thing called that they named the Mandela effect or Mandela effect, after Nelson Mandela.
Where you doing?
The Mandela effect. It's named after Nelson Mandela.
6 and 7.
Because many years ago, it was reported that he died in prison. And so people repeated it often enough that they actually started believing it. So there's this large, it's kind of like flat earthers. But people believe that Mandela died in prison, when we in fact know that he didn't die in prison. He got out and went on to become the elected president or prime minister of South Africa, whatever they have. The idea is that if you repeat a falsehood often enough, you'll start to believe it yourself, and others will start to believe it as well, which is, we see on a huge scale here because of 45's constant claim of winning the election and constant claims about all the fraud, which is in all the lawsuits and with all the attorneys, they've never been able to establish at all, because they haven't even been able to find evidence to submit that would stand up in court.
As a matter of fact, the next day, Barr is the one that told the Associated Press that they hadn't found any evidence of any large-scale ballot fraud that would change the election, which really got Trump angry.
Well, and now we have the Supreme Court and everybody else. The thing, the Norman Vincent Peale connection with Trump, he so idolizes. There is a very thin line between delusion and positive thinking. You believe against all odds that something is true, and you believe it till you convince everybody else. It's that whole emperor clothes thing. And,
probably all.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, he's like deluding the American people into believing that he actually won the election.
Exactly.
When he really did. I mean, the cases are being thrown out in the Supreme Court and stuff. It's
right. That's right.
It's delusion in a way.
Yeah.
But can I go back to the idea, if you repeat something enough that people will believe it? That's an old Nazi trick. When they came into power, they kept repeating certain things, and that became a theory that he had, and we've been told. I can't really base that in truth.
That was Goebbels. That was Goebbels. That was he was Minister of Propaganda, and that's what he did.
Well, do you think that also affects then Trump's base? He just keeps repeating that to his base, and so that's the propaganda aspect that we see from Goebbels.
Yeah,
but that's because he
not only him, but you've got Fox News and all the
I might have to order more
radio people repeating it.
Yeah. Course, Fox News now is on his naughty list because they're not buying into all of this.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, his naughty list, which is probably pretty large right now.
Have you ever had a thought pop into your head, or a memory? It seems like a memory pop into your head, and you stop and wonder. It's like, well, wait a minute, did that really happen, or was that from a dream?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Or is that just something some wish that I had, wanted sometime in the past, and now was it ever fulfilled? So yeah, it's the mind plays strange tricks on us.
Has anyone ever heard the saying, "If you can't convince them, confuse them"?
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we have to look forward to with the eclipse, the total solar eclipse. You don't go outside looking for it because you can't see it from here. It's only going to be visible down in the southern hemisphere, basically an arc stretching from the southern Atlantic across central and southern South America, and then into the southern Pacific. The line of totality actually goes down across southern Argentina and southern Chile. So don't go looking for it. Don't waste your time. But we won't see any change here visually. But if you got something in that 19 to 23, 24 degrees of Sagittarius Gemini, you're probably going to be feeling it, or even Virgo or Pisces. Now that you mention it,
that squares my moon. It's all the last eclipses have hit something in my chart exactly, and I haven't really noticed much happening. So we'll see.
You're lucky, aren't you?
No, not really. actually the opposite. But it is interesting that I really haven't noticed anything like the solar eclipse in July, was it June? Yeah, at the solstice, at the summer solstice, sat exactly to the minute of Uranus.
Bless you.
Bless you, bless you.
Yeah, so, and I didn't notice anything with that either.
Yeah.
So, and I looked back to 19 years ago when that had happened before, and things were great. And they're kind of great now, even though there's, you know.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Again, you know, the ancients tended to look at solar eclipses, particularly as bad omens. Of course, the concept was that the dragon representing the nodal axis was eating the sun. And of course, they would often do ceremonies, and then the sun would reappear and all would be right with the world again.
But they were also looking at that from a mundane perspective, which,
yeah, it was,
you know, that's a really different thing than if you're looking at it for an individual's personal. So.
Yeah, they tended to look at it as omens regarding any country or the emperor or king or whoever was in charge.
But I don't know. I've had eclipses do great big things to me. In fact, my first wife was a victim of an eclipse. Every eclipse there for 4 eclipses ended in some aspect of our charts being crazy, and then we got a divorce. So I think that there's something about maybe how sensitive you are to an eclipse point, or maybe just the aspect of how you need to look at what you're doing wrong. Like this is on the south node, and I think that for a lot of people, this is going to be, who brought up the fact that it's the south node, so you need to clean yourself up from all the bad things you've done in the past, or recover from incidents that are drawing you back again into your past. That's a really good thing to think about. And it's just, Jim, I don't know exactly what Saros 4 means, but to me, I was just looking at it as knowing what we generally think about, you know, South Node. So does anyone know exactly what the Saros cycle means at that point? Is there something from Brady that would lead us on in this way?
I know what the Saros, I can explain what the Saros cycles are.
Please do.
Yeah, it's actually, and I'm working on stuff with eclipses now. It's very complicated. There's Saros cycles, and that means that each eclipse that happens is a part of a cycle of eclipses. It belongs in the same family. So if you look at the Saros cycle, look at it like a family of eclipses, and all eclipses begin at one of the poles. So either the North Pole or the South Pole. And over a period of years, like we're looking seriously like 1100 years or more or less, it's not exact. They kind of swirl through the globe and come. So if it begins at the North Node, the cycle will eventually end at the South Pole. Did I say node? I meant pole. And so the original beginning eclipse is the one that sets the tone for what this family or Saros cycle is about. And then you can look at each individual eclipse as being, you know, something that brings that farther along. So they're really, it's, in my personal opinion, eclipses are probably the hardest thing to figure out because they are really complicated when you start getting into them. So, you know, because like some of the eclipses, they're part of a family that started 1100 years ago.
What's the derivation of the word Saros?
I don't know. I can look it up while we're talking. So I'll look it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my version of Eagle and a Lark opened up so I can see a little bit about what
223 synodic months is what that is. So can be used to predict eclipses of the sun and moon. So it's whatever the synodic months, approximately 6,585.3211 days, or 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. That's,
how did these people used to do this without computers?
You know, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, with computers and calculators, I still can't figure these things out.
Oh man, I tell you.
I'm just glad if somebody else did it for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
They say, I forgot how early it was, that they knew the circumference of the earth and they were only off by about a couple of miles.
Amazing.
And they did it with geometry.
Amazing. It's just so
Yes,
amazing.
And I don't, I mean, we're talking, you know, I don't even know what year it was, but way, way back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So what was the theme of the SAR cycle? Was there a general theme to it? I mean, did it mean like
Each one has its own.
its own theme? So
Yeah.
did you happen to know?
And that's determined by the first eclipse that happens in that cycle.
I can read that theme for you if you want.
That would be great.
Yeah.
According to Brady, it's a strong emotional feelings concerning relationships or money. There could be anger, a sense of fatedness. Individuals may find themselves caught up in a relationship event which are beyond their control. There could be a sudden desire to finish a relationship. I guess Trump will get rid of Barr.
Yeah.
These emotions may be blocked or checked in some way, leading to a great deal of frustration.
Oh.
It says avoid rash action. I don't think Trump will do that.
No, he doesn't know how to do
I think he can.
that. Yeah. Some things are beyond a person's control. He's beyond his own control.
Well, this really hits.
Also, you have that Mars is trining Mercury up there in the 12th house. And next week, you'll have Mars squaring Pluto.
yeah, there's a whole lot going on yet. So, okay,
Yeah,
so let's take a
it's going to be
take a
very busy
look
the rest of
at-
this month.
speaking of. Hang on, here we go. Oh, the wrong one. Not as ambidextrous as I think I am. Oh, here we go. I had it written here. Yes. There's, silly me, if I had just looked ahead to the next slide, we would have had all this. Sarah Series 4 South. So there's a slide that goes over it, and it talks about just what Cornelia just read. Series carries with it strong emotional feelings concerning and so on. Okay. So then how does this affect, might this affect people like our president?
Well, his moon's at 21 sad, so I think he's gonna go crazy.
Yeah. Mercury is basically sitting on will be sitting on his south node. So he's basically just had a nodal return. And I know that some think of nodal returns as being generally positive, but like I always say, there's two sides to everything in the universe except rainbows. So you have potential for something positive happening or something not so positive or negative happening, good or bad, however you want to look at it.
I think
And
it's
you know,
the
it
beginning of a
also
new-
marks the end of a cycle.
Yeah.
Total returns mark the
Yeah.
end of a cycle and the beginning of the next cycle. So, if you look at the nodes from a karmic standpoint, it could be that karma's, as they say, sometimes karma can be a bit of a challenge and come back and bite you on the butt. And, with his butt, that could hurt.
Yeah.
Time for him to start his television station.
I'm like looking at this and like his sun appears to be like opposing like the moon right now, like the moon transit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder like how that's gonna affect them and stuff. Like his sun being opposite the moon transit.
One thing that's interesting about Trump that most people don't talk about is that his Mercury is out of bounds. Notice down here in the lower right-hand corner.
That's not all that's out of bounds.
Yeah.
A lot out of bounds there.
Mercury's out of bounds.
Yes, and he had Pluto out of bounds as well. But what's interesting is that his Mercury is out of bounds north, and with the eclipse, we have Mercury out of bounds south. So basically, it's a Mercury opposition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's,
and squaring Neptune. Where is Neptune? Transiting Neptune, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is squaring Neptune, it looks like, this chart.
So you've got...
He really is delusional.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah, and the moon is. What's interesting too is that the moon will be out of bounds for the eclipse as well. And what happens is that even though the moon is out of bounds, the sun is so close to that fence line. It's kind of like the sun is on one side of the boundary and the moon is just over on the other side of the boundary. So, and the moon is closer to the Earth for this particular new moon, which then gives us that total solar eclipse. And they're extremely close to the node. So, yeah. But it doesn't look good for Donald.
Well, the Mercury's also opposite Uranus.
Yeah.
Oh, his Mercury is opposite Uranus. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't look like tomorrow will be that good of a day for Trump, according to this chart.
Oops. Back up. There we go. Okay, so here's Joe Biden. Here, yeah, the good thing is that it's a new moon in his first house, which marks the beginning of a new cycle.
And he has a Venus return.
Yeah, the Venus return helps. Yeah, there's something that you might consider looking at is look at the new moon that occurs in your first house, marking the beginning of a new cycle, basically a year cycle for you, which can occur, whenever, depending upon what your first house is. But in this case, it happens in Biden's first house, which I would think of as being very positive because it's a new moon marking a new beginning. Joe doesn't have any planets out of bounds.
The Uranus square Pluto bothers me a little bit. I think he's inheriting huge problems here. I think that this is a lot to take on. And he's going to be getting it. I mean, like, this is in many ways as big a problem as Obama ever met with the great bank problem. To me, this is something you really need to think over. It will challenge his individuality and his ability to deal with higher law.
Yeah.
Well, at least the Supreme Court came down on his side.
That Uranus is going to come up to oppose his Mars in the 12th.
Yes.
In fact, Uranus and Mars are conjuncts on inaugural day. Mars and Uranus are conjunct at 8 Taurus.
Yes.
Are we going to do that next month, inaugural day? Are we going to do it this time?
Yeah, inauguration is by law January 20th at noon.
Yes, so we'll have a meeting before that, so we can even go over it again.
Yeah, we'll be looking at that again probably in January.
Now I know this is off, but I was watching Ken Burns, the Roosevelts, and I was really like taken back. When FDR first took office, it was so similar to what was going on when Biden takes office. I couldn't believe the similarities. It was very interesting. I don't know if we want to look at it. Somebody wants to look at his chart one day. But FDR was they were doing the same thing to FDR as they're doing to Biden. Very interesting. And of course, back then it was that Great Depression, and just he was being called a socialist, and on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah, when you start looking, it's easy to find similarities with something in the past.
Whether you haven't taken your business fully online yet, or you simply want to scale it to new heights quickly, this module will help.
I'm sorry, I had a little trouble understanding you. It's a bit of an echo or something. Could you repeat that, please?
Is she there?
Hello? I don't even know who that was. I'm sorry. All right, let's take a look at Kamala. Whoops. Come on. Here we go. Okay, so
Yeah, because her nodes are there too.
yeah, so for her, it's falling in the 6th house, indicating, and when you consider that, well, yeah, her new job.
She's got a nice trine to Mars to Mercury in the
Yeah.
house of work, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mars being in her 11th house, I think that she's got to do a lot of work between handling the progressionist on one hand and the centrist on the other hand within the party. Because once they have power, they'll be more free to really start debating one another, which I think is kind of a problem with the Democratic Party. They aren't as unified as they might be, except for they actually all agreed on beating Trump. But now that they've beaten Trump, they'll turn on each other and start arguing over policy, which I think she'll be a very good person to kind of bridge that discussion and try to bring it home in certain ways with AOC and those people.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve for her, since she will be the, what is the title? I guess President of the Senate or something.
Pro tem. Yeah.
Pro tem, yes, President Pro tem, something like that of the Senate, which means that in the event of a tie, she'll have the deciding vote.
You're being optimistic about the 2 Democrats winning in Georgia, right?
Yeah, but even, and if the 2 Democrats win in Georgia, then you have a 50-50 split, and there's a higher probability of more tie votes for her to break. And if not, then, somebody's going to have to work some magic in order to try to push things through. It's going to be real interesting, because if the Republicans retain control of the Senate with the Democrats controlling the House, if the Republicans play a straight party line and the Democrats play straight party line, it can be a real challenge trying to get anything through or done, other than things that are
except for executive action. And certainly he was at Obama's elbow watching him negotiate the same problem.
Yeah, now Biden has got history with Congress, so that could help him, because he's one of, he was one of them for a long time, and so that
even Mitch McConnell said that he was great at reaching across the aisle, even to him.
Yeah.
So, and maybe once Trump is gone, he will be more likely to kind of re-resonate with his roots. Although I wonder if Trump's going to never back off and keep trying to run for, the next election now.
Yeah, he may well announce that he's running in 24 as he leaves the White House. So who knows what? What is it?
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's a way for him to keep making money too.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And to just keep causing chaos.
Yeah, to quote Lamont Cranston, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
The shadow do.
The shadow do.
The shadow does, I'm sorry.
Which is, it's kind of a scary thought. Okay, anybody got any other thoughts, questions, comments about any of these charts with the eclipse?
Did you talk about the Pluto transit hitting both Kamala's chart and Joe's in March?
No, we haven't really talked about him. Pluto transit, yeah. See, for Harris, the Pluto transit, not really. The one thing it's going to do is trine her Jupiter.
It's going to square her sun, square her moon. All right, as we get to that Pluto return.
And yeah, I don't know that it's not going to get there. I don't think it gets to 27.
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure when
in 2022.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It won't go all the way, but it will go to 27 in March. And that's the beginning of the Pluto return to the US chart, but it'll square her sun, it will square her moon, and sextile Joe's sun. because they both have that 27 degrees. It's just,
Yeah.
so it's interesting to see what will happen in March.
Yeah, it's always interesting what the future may hold in store for us. Any other thoughts, anybody?
Well, just one more thing. Let's take a look at her Neptune. Transiting Neptune has been working on her Venus for quite a while. And so I think that she's got a lot of responsibility in terms of projecting what a woman can do in this, being the first vice president and the first woman of color within the executive branch. And so I think that that's another challenge that she's going to have, and she's going to begin working on it. And I think it's kind of good that Neptune will more and more stop that opposition, which I think means she'll find her roots in some way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with it being Neptune, I think in the 10th could be an indication as well that there are a lot of people that have expectations of her doing and behaving in a certain way, and the probability for their being disappointed if she doesn't do as they think or say she should do. And unfortunately, what people tend not to realize is that, president, vice president, when they make their decisions, they have to act based on the information they have at that point in time, not necessarily based on what somebody else thinks they ought to do. So it's going to be interesting.
She has a moon in Aries, just like Joe Biden does.
Yeah, their moons are basically conjunct, as I recall. Yeah, it's a good connection for the two of them. It'll be interesting to see how.
She seems to me like she did a really good, I hate to use the word pivot, but there it is, to being a supporting player. I mean, she's got a lot in promised for her if she does, because he's already said he's only going to be a one-term president.
Yeah.
So she obviously will be the choice next time around.
Yeah. I mean, because he's just turned 78, so he would be almost 82 by the time the next election rolls around.
Exactly.
And in 2.5 years, Uranus will hit his Mercury. I don't think he's going to finish. I think that this Pluto squaring her sun and moon is going to be her initiation. And she's going to be taking over in 2.5 years, because I don't think he'll survive that Uranus hitting his Mercury.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope so too.
I'm going to think positive. Too much Norman Vincent Peale in me to think that it's not important.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
Yes.
The chart that I have for Joe Biden shows 0-degree Taurus moon. And someone said that they thought that Kamala and Joe had Aries moon. I show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually 0 Taurus, but they're basically conjunct. It's an out-of-sign conjunction. So
I see what you mean. Okay, I thought someone said
when you do their composite, they have an Aries moon.
I see. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Let's go on. Okay, so here is the Capricorn ingress. Yeah.
It's the big enchilada.
Yeah, that's right. Right after the Sun-Mercury superior conjunction, just before the Jupiter Saturn conjunction. And we see at this point that the Sun is basically right at the boundary there, with Mercury out of bounds as well. Tightest aspect, of course, we have Jupiter Saturn conjunction, and then the Moon sextile Pluto. So the Moon's here at 2339 and Pluto's at 2351. So that's cutting it pretty close. But yeah, this is the LA chart. Done it for Washington, but that's okay. 3-hour time difference.
The Mercury conjunction will then move through all of Capricorn and into Aquarius about the time that all this activity is going on. So I think it
Yes.
carries a certain amount of difficulty in terms of communication and reigniting some of the old stuff that was going on during the great conjunction in Capricorn. Now we have the great conjunction in Aquarius, and that it will also go over that. All of this it'll all be something to lead into Jim, when is that they have the thing with the Congress has to validate the election?
January 6th. So the Electoral College votes tomorrow, and then they certify their votes, and the records are sent through a series of channels, but one copy of the vote goes to sent to Congress, where on January 6th, Congress tallies them up and basically makes the official declaration of the winner. The challenge there is that, or the potential there is that with so many supporters in his camp, that some of them may try to do something, like some of the representatives or senators may try to do something at that time as far as the Electoral College votes are concerned, and try to disenfranchise some of them. So, yeah, bottom line is, until Congress makes it official and declares Biden the winner, and anything can happen.
Isn't this North Node squaring the Neptune kind of a good thing in the house of inheritance?
Well, I don't know, because it's also squaring the South Node. Can't square one without squaring the other. So illusions, delusions, it's a little closer to the South Node than the North Node. And I think for me, that's probably just an indication of how things are still uncertain and will remain uncertain until early January.
Now that the Supreme Court has really come down on Trump's ass, basically, is there much of a chance for him to keep this thing going, do you think?
Well, sure. He keeps it going with his Twitter feeds and his rhetoric. And
his chaos thing will always go on as long as he's alive. But I'm just talking about his realistic chance of overturning the election.
His realistic chances are relatively slim, but as I said, there are things that could happen tomorrow.
What do you think is his biggest realistic possibility?
Well, one possibility would be that tomorrow would be that some of the electors, when they cast their votes, vote for him instead of Biden. Now, most states, they're required to cast their votes based upon who won the popular vote in the state.
Right.
Two states, Nebraska and Maine, split them. And normally what will happen then is, if like in Wisconsin, Biden won, and so the electors that would go from Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia will be electors from Biden's camp. And so there shouldn't be any question about how they vote.
Yeah.
But you just never know. This is kind of a strange year, and it could go either way. Strange things happen.
But how about in a state like Arizona or Georgia or a swing state like that could go Trump's way tomorrow?
I just don't see that. I really don't.
What about the eclipses on his sun and moon?
Yeah. I don't.
I also might mention that the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, to me, is symbolic of moving into the future.
Yeah.
Rather than to the past of Capricorn.
Yeah.
because they will continue on in Aquarius. So I think we're moving towards a future, whether anybody likes it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think, like, with this Jupiter Saturn conjunction, we're going to see a lot of, like, like a real evaluation of our societal systems and stuff. And hopefully, like, making these systems be for the better and for like many generations to come, like, with that conjunction in Jupiter and Saturn, Aquarius.
Yeah.
And
It's
also
like a
squaring
200-year.
the Uranus in Taurus.
It
which rules them. So there's going to be a big movement forward.
Yeah.
It's also squaring Joe Biden's moon, the Jupiter Saturn conjunction. So it should be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah.
I think so too. I mean, Saturn. I always look at Saturn as something that is solidify, organizing things, getting things in shape. It's not just constriction. And with Jupiter there like that in Aquarius, I think that's a real hopeful thing there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's certainly an indication of time for some optimism. It's 0 degrees, a new beginning. It's the beginning of a new cycle for Jupiter and Saturn. 20 years later, they will be conjunct again in another air sign, and they basically will be in air signs until 2219. However, there will be one conjunction in Scorpio, just to test the waters of the water signs. But basically, we're looking at air sign conjunct for the extended future out 130, so about 140 years. But yeah.
What house is the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in both Kamala's and Joe's chart?
Now let's look back and see, because we didn't do that, did we? So for Kamala, it will be in her 8th house. For Jolly Joe, or Sleepy Joe, as Donnie likes to call him, it looks to be in his 2nd house.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's basically they've got the 2nd and the 8th house covered. It should be interesting.
Yeah.
But let's not forget Uranus. Uranus is the unexpected.
I expect we'll get that.
It could mean that things could change much faster or more dramatically than we expect. Or it could be, the proverbial hits the fan.
Unexpected, of course, for half the nation is different than it is for the other half of the nation.
Yep. Yeah. What's interesting too is that have you seen a map showing how the red and the blue states? And if you look at, if you remember the suit that the Attorney General from the state of Texas filed with the Supreme Court, and that was joined in by 17 other states?
Yeah.
They basically all fall like right down the middle of the United States. And wasn't it the Attorney General of Texas that suggested or hinted or brought up the question of secession from the if things don't go right? And
following what California and Washington and Oregon and what was the other state talked about, if Trump becomes president, we'll just secede. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
But
along the lines of the split in the country, the total solar eclipse of August 21st, 2017 was exactly through the middle of the country. It split our country in half. Yeah. And so people were talking about the fact that, where an eclipse is actually visible and how it manifests over those countries. Those are the countries that are going to be most affected by it. And looking at that, I mean, it started like in Oregon or something and went, you know, on a diagonal, like basically just above Florida, I think something. But if you look at it, you can see it literally splits the country in half as its projection, its path across the country. And there was talk about the fact that it manifested as a split in the country, which we were already seeing in August of 2017. Quite
well, you know,
severely.
and I have to share at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock here at my time. I'm going to be Zooming again with a friend of mine through another friend who's a highly intelligent, lovely, wonderful public servant type person. She's well positioned in Arizona politics. She's a Trump supporter, thinks he's the biggest jerk that ever walked the room, but she also, like many other Republicans, believe that the election was stolen from him. Now, you know, help me with that. And my ex-husband boyfriend, same thing, highly intelligent. And he thinks Trump is like, you know, an obstreperous adolescent is how he describes him. But the economics is what he's interested in, same as my friend Cara. And they both feel that the election was stolen from Trump. Now, I don't see the reason in that
drugs
anywhere, but these are pretty intelligent people. So, I mean, I just look at this and go, how has this happened?
It's that Neptune.
So there you go.
Well, you still have to realize that we have that problem in the House of Representatives, and 140 members of the House of Representatives also believe that the election was stolen.
Yes.
I don't think I think they're going to get it through the House, but it's not going to be without a lot of bombastic rhetoric. But I still think, and I have friends the same way, by the way, that toss it on. I have friends who are very intelligent, my brother, and it's kind of like the Civil War, like it divides brothers. Like my brother and I had to agree not to talk.
Yeah, I can't remember what the planets are at the moment, but we have some aspects that are very similar to what was going on in the Civil War. So.
Well, and then when you look at people like Chris Christie, or you look at that guy in Georgia, who was head of the election thing there, and he got up and had real strong language that these guys had to just cut this out, that they're destroying our democracy. There are Republicans who feel that way.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting thing there.
Morning, and I was surprised that he was saying, you know, it's done, just got to move along.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Pluto return, if we go back to the last time, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, right? What we were doing, we were separating as British subjects. And so there was all this rebellion. And so I think that's what's going on in the country. There's this, like those who are, you know, it's like represented by things like those are the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers, right? You know,
and yet the irony is that a lot of the working class now is all for King George. Oh, pardon me, King Donald.
Yeah,
that's the irony here.
Somebody even referred to him as
healers. I can't even tell you.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. It's the very, very wealthy, and it's the working class. The working class who've lost their jobs and feel that they're hopelessly poor.
No, but there are healers. I mean, people who are bona fide healers that I know here who believe that Trump is the savior that's to take us away from the ball. I've just been stunned.
Where are you?
Asheville, but I'm talking California and here. Because I lived in California. I lived in Los Angeles for 23 years. And when I hear people who are highly conscious, highly educated, highly intelligent healers talking about being that they have bought this thing about Trump being the massive savior, and that the Democratic Party is part of the cabal. I mean, it's just
who is this talking right now?
Oh, this is Tony Gallardi.
And you're in Asheville, North Carolina?
I moved to Asheville 2 years ago.
Okay, because I had a friend who lived there, a gay friend, by the way.
What?
And I had a gay friend who was married to his male partner, and they were living in Asheville, North Carolina. and they found it a very mixed experience. I know my Middlebury College Breadlow School of English has a campus in Asheville, North Carolina. A lot of liberal people are.
A lot of liberal people here.
Yes.
So that's why it's been bizarre to get stuff from people who talk about the pandemic, you know, and who are, I'm telling you, highly conscious people that are in that camp. It's not just the working. I thought it was just working class people and rich Republicans.
I think.
And in your opinion, what is it that persuades them? Most of them can't stand his personality.
It's bizarre to me that a woman who's highly conscious would, but they have, there's a channel, there's a woman named Lori something or other who comes actually out of California, channeling that he is the great white savior from the whatever the galactic council. And all these people, like I'm looking at her following because people have sent me like, you got to listen to this person.
Is she a member of QAnon?
So she has never identified herself as being part of QAnon. But I'm just saying that there are more people than just what we think who are in that camp. And so I just think it's part of this massive transformation on the planet. That's all. I think that's how I'm holding it.
But, I'm sorry, there's just one other thing I'm wondering here. In terms of reason, just simple sheer reason,
I know.
How are those friends of yours squaring it that even the Republican election officials, all to a one, say that this was a fair election?
Because they talk about Biden and his being into all of the sex stuff, you know, and the dark child porn that his son is in. Well, that's just supposedly the tip of the iceberg. So they've been given all this information about Joe. And, you know, when you look at all that Scorpio and Taurus moon in his chart, there may have been at some time some sexual stuff.
Well, but that's a red herring to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do they square it that all of the Republican election officials, to a one, claim that this was a square, fair election? How are they thinking that the wool was pulled over these people?
Every Republican I know believes that this was stolen.
But do you know how they square that in terms of rationale?
If you watch, because of what Fox News, you know, shows, what is on the internet, in terms of those channels, if you watch Social Dilemma, you'll see that certain people are getting certain information. You and I are getting certain information that is more CNN, that is more liberal based.
So they're not told that all of the Republican officials for the election are claiming that it was a fair election. They're not hearing that.
No.
Watch Fox News. Watch Fox News.
See, that's part of the problem. It's like, you know, they're getting their news from a different source. They're getting it from like Fox News and any right wing, like, you know, stations, and it's like giving them like different misinformation. So society leads to them, you know, thinking this election was stolen from them.
But this is an interesting thing, that the microphone has been taken away from the Republican election officials.
Yes, well, Janine, what's happening is that they're being told or believing that those Republican election officials are part of they're secretly part of that cabal.
They're imposters. They're all imposters.
Yeah, they're Republican in name only.
Yeah,
there's a documentary out now, and I forgot the name. I wish I could remember it. And the man resigned, I think he from Facebook or one of those, where the information is fed to certain people. I'm being very vague here, but if, you know, you're on your internet and all of a sudden these ads pop up because you looked at bookcases last week. Right. The same thing's happening with political stuff and all this information.
Yes.
They have decided who wants to hear what, and that's what they feed in.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a big problem too. And there is a documentary on this, but I demand to actually quit either Facebook or one of those because he found out he was part of that, setting that up. But the other thing is people who voted, my opinion, some of the people who voted for Trump 4 years ago thought that he could do some basic things for the economy and the farmers in the Midwest. But it is questioning why people now are still voting for him after they see him for 4 years. But there's an interesting psychological undershadow, right? Shadow side. Mm-hmm. What's going on is the underbelly, the shadow coming up really big now. There is a Jungian analyst, Lionel Corbett, and he has his own website. And I listened to his lecture on terrorists and fundamentalists, and he goes back psychologically. Trump looks like a powerful, quote, father figure, bad or good. So there's a lot of that going on, you know, psychologically. And the fundamentalists and the terrorists need that strong figure. And if you watch PBS, there's a lot of on Hitler and Mussolini, and Rick Steves has a program, and they show why the rise of these people happened psychologically. So I think there's a psychological, besides the money and besides all this, I think there's a psychological kind of even father figure in there.
I'd like to pop in for a second and remind everyone who's saying, you know, all these people are getting all this information that's, you know, this selected information, but that is true of everybody who says that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
Yeah, exactly. It is.
and that is why there is such a divide. I purposefully joined some groups to get to see both sides of situations, right? To better understand.
Mhm.
Like, I am definitely, I have long eschewed either party. From the very beginning, I was like, nope, you can't put me in one camp or the other. And at the time, it was because I had leanings towards the Democratic Party, but I thought I would do better by not picking a side and by being able to shift and disrupt, if you will, especially with Electoral Congress. Being in California, I tend to vote third party because, like, why not? You know, like, that's the only way I feel I'm going to get a chance. So I want us all to be aware that it's so easy to slip into that divisiveness.
Oh,
and
absolutely. I completely.
Yeah, like I totally agree and stuff. Like it's very easy to go slip inside divisiveness. That's why it's important to, like, you know, get clarity as like, you know, what you think and stuff too, and, like, you know, try to be fair too, like, when it comes to politics.
So,
you know.
So as far as this last election went, I have long been disgusted with the whole mess of it and both sides. I've been extremely pissed off at the Democratic National Convention for contributing to this and basically playing into the hands, feeding in, committing all sorts of, honestly, amoral, hypocritical, and political. I mean, if your job as a politician, for God's sakes, be good at politics. Don't feed into sending people away to the Republican Party. That was probably the most disgusting thing I saw. But it was their own actions. And I'm not saying about Biden specifically. If anything, a lot of the people that I know that were switching votes or were just abstaining from voting even, it's because they're so disgusted with the Democratic Party more than
also
it's the Democratic Party they're disgusted with.
The split that you're talking about, look even within the parties. Look at the Republican Party and the Tea Partiers. Look at the Democratic Party and the Bernie Sanders contingent.
Yeah.
And I speak as somebody who was very fond of Bernie Sanders and campaigned for him. But I'm looking at this now, they have not clearly defined the difference between communism and socialism. So you've got parties.
Excuse me. I think we've gotten way over to the political side.
Right.
Kind of lost.
That's actually going to be my other point.
And I'm sitting here waiting to hear about December 21st and this conjunct, I think, Jupiter and Saturn planets, stars. Is that the two?
Yes.
Yeah, Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah.
Okay, so my question, Jimmy, is what was the Christmas star? Several people have asked me what was in the heavens that the wise man followed, and was it this conjunction or was it something else?
Well, it wasn't this conjunction. I can say that confidently because the conjunction doesn't last that long. Okay. And it's not bright enough to be mistaken and to be some kind of a pointer for them. And then the question becomes, and if you think about it, I mean, the conjunction is going to go travel across the sky and then it's going to be gone that one night. And then the next night, you'll clearly see that it's not a star, it's the two planets.
Right.
These guys were astrologers, so they knew what was going on. They knew it was Jupiter and Saturn.
Was that
so
what it was? Was it Jupiter and Saturn back then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's what I wanted to know. They just called
Yes, it was a Jupiter Saturn. There was a Jupiter Saturn conjunction back around that time. I think
Jim, what about that? Doesn't Brady have some kind of a seminar that you had me on? It signed up soon.
Coming up next Friday or Saturday. Yeah. If you check out Astrologos, which is a website that involves Bernadette Brady and I don't remember the other lady's name. She's doing a free webinar next, I think it's Friday or Saturday, on the Christmas star. And I think the problem is we get this idea that it was a star and that it shone bright and we followed it every night. I don't think so. There's no record of a comet at that time or of a supernova at that time that would have given rise to something unusual in the sky that they would have seen, night after night. The other thing too is that if you look at just the sheer distance involved that they had to travel, it would have been several weeks because they didn't have mass transit in those days. Mass transit was 2 people on a camel.
Yeah, they may also have, over the centuries, they may have said, we are following the stars because we know what's supposed to happen based on astrology.
Yeah.
And that got translated into they followed a star.
Yes. Unfortunately, yeah, the texts were written after the fact by somebody who heard the story from somebody who heard the story. And once, and it was written originally in Greek, I think, or Aramaic, and then translated and retranslated, and then changed accordingly as the Bible was written and rewritten and rewritten. So yeah, I don't think there wasn't anything really a star. The closest thing would have probably been the Jupiter Saturn conjunction around that time, which would have been an indication to them that something big was happening in Israel. But it would have been basically, as far from a star perspective, it might have been a one-night event.
It could have just been up and they just followed that direction one night, kept going.
Yeah, well, the reason they went to Israel was because it was Jupiter and Saturn involved, and I forget which one is the ruling planet of Israel, or considered that by the ancients. So that's why they went that way. I think Jupiter was the king; it represents kings, and Saturn was Israel, and that's why they went to Israel.
So Jim, what do you think this Jupiter Saturn is going to portend for the future this time around?
All right, let's take a look at it. So here we have a list of some of the past times that Jupiter and Saturn were in Aquarius. So you can see here, I went back to the 60s. So Jupiter went into Aquarius in 61, then it retrograded back out and then back in again. It was there in 70, went in 73 and 85, 97, 2009, and 2020, which is the one we're looking at now. So from a reference point, you can think about if there's something was going on at that time for yourself. If you have something that might be, at or near the 0 Aquarius or any of the fixed signs or the air signs. And then what's coming up next year is Jupiter will go into Pisces, then retrograde back into Aquarius briefly, and then back into Pisces. Now Saturn, because it's slower, it went into Aries in 62, into Aquarius, I'm sorry, in 62, then it went into Pisces and then retrograded back into Aquarius in 64, and then it was again in 91. Aquarius into Pisces, back into Aquarius. So it's only done it a couple of times, once in the early 60s and once in the early 90s. So, but those are time frames that you can look at and say, okay, what's going on in my life around that time, and where is 0 Aquarius and the sign Aquarius? What do I have? Something in Aquarius? Do I have something in Leo, Taurus, Scorpio? or maybe Gemini Virgo, Gemini Libra, and what was going on in my life around that time that might help you to figure out what this could mean for you as an individual. Now, more than that, we can look at their conjunctions. The last time, well, March 4th of 1226, they were conjunct at 2 Aquarius 58 minutes, and they were separated by only 2 minutes and 5 seconds of declination. So that was the last time there was an Aquarius conjunction that was this close, where they could almost appear as a single point of light. I would say most people
would.
Long
time, hasn't it?
You know, yeah, most people will be able to see the distinction between the 2 points of light.
I want to say something here. I looked this up, and they think that this is like, this is the 13th century, and it's the beginning of the awareness, which becomes full blown by the time you get to the 16th century, 17th century, of the Renaissance. It represents a time when new knowledge was coming into the European culture from rediscovering the Greeks, and also rediscovering kinds of literature and art. And I think in one way or another that this time we're having a change, a kind of looking back now, where can we go from here? And we're into a new age. I think this one aspect of this is that one way or another, in the long term, we're really entering into a new paradigm of how to look at what's going to be the next step. Like something new is going to happen. I'd like to bring up one thing that hasn't been brought up yet, but should be, is that what about technology as we look at it in this next coming time? We're at a point now where technology, the Uranus effect, if you will, is going to challenge our very understanding. What's AI going to do to us? What is this aspect going to do to the culture as a whole? Besides politics, just in terms of the growth of new ideas and technology and new ways of looking at it. Because remember, the whole prospect of making that change into the Renaissance eventually brought us into the age of reason in the 18th century. So we're going into a whole, and that changed just now. We went from to the age of the machines with the concept of the cotton gin and all these new, telegraph and all that stuff happened because of this beginning change of going into the Renaissance at this time. So I think we're at a paradigm shift here. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of interesting things about technology and how it is coming into our life and how much more it invades our life. Look at how it's changed the way we even go to movies and things now, what a change there was this year, and the growth of TV at a point of more of this. You have to sign up for different groups to get involved in different shows like Netflix and Peacock, and I can't name them all. But I think one of the things to think about during this Aquarius thing that's starting is a real new jump in technology. And so I'm going to quit talking here, but I think that one of the things to look at is, my key word is there, we're going into a paradigm shift. Thanks.
But maybe that also, that technology could be something applied to some of the huge problems that we're facing environmentally.
Good point.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's some tidbits about Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. They occur about every 20 years. They occur by element, typically with a series of 9 or 10 conjunctions in the same element. And then they change to the next element, going fire, earth, air, water, and then back to fire again. Typically during a sequence, for example, we had this, we're just coming out of an earth sequence, but in 1980, there was a conjunction in Libra, I believe it was, in an air sign. And then we went back in 2020 or 2000 to an air sign. And now we're in earth sign, and now we're back into the air signs. So there's going to be one conjunction, one or two conjunctions prior to the shift that'll be in the next element, just as kind of like a taste or teaser of what's coming.
Are you talking about Jupiter conjunctions specifically? I'm
talking specifically about Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions.
Okay.
Just Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. So this year we have it at 0 Aquarius. In 2040, it'll be in Libra, and in 2060, it'll be in Gemini. And then it comes back to Aquarius on March 14th of 2080 at 11 Aquarius 52.
I
So
think we're going to be dealing more with race relations. You know, when Saturn originally went into Aquarius last spring, was it around spring? Is when everything started coming up around Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Barack Obama has Jupiter 0 degrees Aquarius in his chart. Almost always, whenever I've seen an interracial, someone who's chosen interracially, almost always I see Venus in Aquarius.
Who chose interracially?
Huh?
Who chose interracially?
I'm saying that of clients that I've worked with.
Oh, got it. I'm
how
sorry.
common it is that with Venus in Aquarius, either choosing someone who is of a different race or
yeah,
out of the box sexually, like a gay relationship. So, but I think because Obama had that Jupiter 0 degrees Aquarius, he definitely was beginning this archetype, of Black leadership. And I think it's no accident that Kamala is coming into the Oval at this time with that Jupiter, Saturn,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I hope that's ominous.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here for a minute and just give you a different kind of viewpoint?
Sure.
I look at this as the Pluto return also is so important. And at the same time, I believe that history repeats itself, only usually on a different level, like development does. You repeat a lot of the things in development from the child to the adult. And the same thing happens in history. So if you look at Obama's election, which was great for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it brought out all of the bias that we've had since the beginning of our country with slavery.
Yeah.
It brought out the underbelly. I think Williamson put it that way, the darkness underneath that we have not dealt with. And it brought it to a climax when we elected Trump, who represents the last bastion of white power supremacy. The Republicans represent that. The Republican Party represents that. They're trying to hold on to that kind of power. But that's all from Capricorn. Now it's changing to a new era where we are finally, because we saw that with the death of Floyd, many people came out for Black Lives Matter that were not Black. I think it is now significant, as you said, that Kamala's there also. So it represents the transition also from Biden represents a transition too, from the old establishment into the new. And he has moved more to the liberal side. So because Trump's Pluto has been opposite Trump's Saturn
Venus.
For the last time, it will be the end of Trump. I mean, reality will take place pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I think by next spring, when we get the spring equinox with Uranus, no, it's with Jupiter and in Aquarius on Washington, D.C.'s ascendant, that'll be a sign of hope. That's in March.
In downtown Asheville,
what happens?
in the last 6 months, they've taken down one by one all the Confederate statues.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is, to me, representative of this, like boom, having to really release all that residue,
With all this talk about Aquarius, what comes into mind is this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Right.
So how long did it take from the 60s to we actually getting into the age of Aquarius? Because it's a period of what, 40 years or something before, are we actually in the age of Aquarius now?
No.
60 years.
60 years. So when do we enter the age of Aquarius?
When Pluto goes into Aquarius.
So that's when?
The next year.
Next year. So we're going to be in the age of Aquarius by next year.
Mm.
Aquarius,
But it doesn't stay there.
It depends on what you mean by age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
I was thinking in the age is what, 2,000 years, 1,000?
Yeah, if you're talking in terms of those ages where they're basically 2,160 years long, we're about 300 years and change from the age of Aquarius, which is when 29, 59, 59 Aquarius is spring equinox.
And the other thing I wanted to point out, you know, the slavery thing, obviously, and the black thing is huge. I mean, obviously, Jews. This is just my feelings on it. It's been going on since the beginning of time, and it feels like America has brought it finally to a head. Maybe we can actually bring some consciousness to this that's been going on in every culture since the age of time, because there's always the black and the white and the positive, and you know what I mean? There's always these opposites. But slavery has been going on, you know, since the beginning of time. Romans and Greeks and Indians and Africans, they all had, as soon as they conquer somebody, they make them slaves. Maybe this age of Aquarius, and maybe the United States is finally in a position to really add some consciousness to this.
Exactly, that's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And there's a wonderful book out. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's called Caste, C-A-S-T-E.
I've heard about it.
Yes, by what's her name? Emily Wilkerson. It is a wonderful book. She compares the caste system in India to the caste system in the Nazis and the caste system in America. And when you read it, you really understand. She calls it the something of our discontents, the origin of our discontents. Our caste system was based on the beginning of slavery and has continued. And now we're bringing it to the surface. It's about time that we understand where it came from, because it's been unconscious for too long. Like you said, it's been acting unconsciously in a lot of people, which is now about to change.
Can I say something about that? This is Jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think this is a good point. I don't want to, belabor this point, but I think it's a very big, huge one around what's happening cosmically. And it's a really incredible and important opportunity for all of us sort of generationally to understand the depth and the amount of, the trauma that's been going on for hundreds of years in this country. I mean, around the world, around slavery, but specifically around this. But this cosmic time is such a powerful and incredible opportunity to for everyone, no matter what generation you're from, and how many times you've sort of seen this cycle, to kind of move 3 notches up in terms of the inner work around transforming your own mind and heart, around like dismantling racial hierarchies and, really understanding the way your mind is around race and racial hierarchies, and transcending this whole idea of race, because it was invented anyway. And really like everyone learning about it, and also like remembering that there's a lot of healing. While there's, been slavery over time in many parts of the world, this is a very different kind that we're talking about, with the sort of contemporary implications are quite different. And it's going to take time, but this energy of what's happening with the conjunction and with the moving into Aquarius, we need all the people to to learn what they don't know. And especially those healers, those of us who are healers and connected to the cosmos in this way, we need to learn what we don't know and ask for leadership of those who've been most impacted by this thing, so that we can like get it out of our way, so that we can actually expand into where we're supposed to be going. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think everybody should read this book, because I'll tell you what it did for me. I grew up without any of that kind of background of prejudice. So as I was growing up, when I started learning that people were this way, I couldn't understand it. I just could not get it into my head why people felt the way they did. And this book explained it to me. It really did explain to me where this unconscious idea came from, that it's been a gradual growth over time. And even though we've chipped away at it, we haven't really dealt with bringing it to full consciousness. And I think that's what this whole war between Obama and Trump, that's what it means. It's that friction that is pulling us apart will eventually lift us to a new level, because whenever you have this dichotomy pulling against each other, eventually it has to break and move to a higher level. And I think that's what it's doing.
End of the old guard.
I think if we're lucky, that may be one of the key factors of these Jupiter Saturn conjunctions moving into air signs, starting in Aquarius at 0 Aquarius. And it may not be until the 2080, when there's the next conjunctions in Aquarius, that people will look back to this time period and the division and this biasness and wonder, how were we this way at all? But it's not going to be a quick process. It'll take time.
Yes, everything takes time.
Yeah, it really does. I want to share a few thoughts about what guys were saying stuff too of the racial injustice. Yeah, it's I don't believe that racism will ever be fully eradicated, but we can do the work to reduce some of the racial biases. And I do think that the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius will help with that in some ways, because Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian and human equality and stuff. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this conjunction affects that and stuff, and the kind of progress we make from it.
Yeah, I think
Also, there's
it reminds me of.
There's a shadow side of Aquarius too that I think we need to address.
Okay.
When Uranus was in Aquarius, at the when 1916 was the beginning of the wars of the 20th century. And one of the things they talk about with Aquarius, because it's Uranus, is fireworks. And we're going to have Uranus squaring this Jupiter Saturn, conjunction. So I think we're going to have a rocky beginning.
Yeah.
Move into all this. It's going to be a volatile 2021.
Yeah.
Well,
also, you're going to have a new generation coming in that are Aquarians.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, if you think about it, we're seeing it right now with the clashes between the Black Lives Matters and the Proud Boys and the other extreme groups.
Yeah.
What comes to mind is I guess a trait or definition of Aquarius that I remember hearing from a teacher, I think it was, or someone early on. The thing about Aquarians, he said, was that they love humanity.
It's just individuals, they have problems.
Yeah.
And hopefully what this whole thing can lead us to is being able to acknowledge and be aware of that difference, that just because you had this white cop kneeling on George Floyd's neck killing him, that doesn't mean all white cops or all white people are bad. Just because there was a black man that was the freeway shooter in Washington, D.C., doesn't mean that all black men are bad.
Yeah.
Exactly. We gotta you gotta consider context and stuff too. There are several white people who do believe in racial equality and who do want to defund the police or want to see it more equality within that system. There are several that do participate in Black Lives Matter. They're not all they don't all have these racist motives.
Yeah, I will say, I'll just say agreed. And I'll just say to close what I will say about this, because I'm sure we want to move to other things, but stating all of these things very explicitly and having really direct conversations about them is stating that, you know, racism and bias has impacted everyone, and first and foremost white people, for the past however many years, hundreds of years. It doesn't mean that equals bad. Doesn't mean white equals bad. It means that there's a lot of psycho-spiritual process over hundreds of years that has been part of a fabric of our society and how this country was created, and globally. And so it takes a lot of undoing and unlearning and relearning in order to transform.
Yeah.
So it's not about bad or good. It's about being honest about what we've been in and what we've all had to participate in, and learning from Black people, first and foremost, been the most impacted, learning and listening and just doing the work and supporting and coming into unity in like an authentic way. But it's going to, as we said, we're at a really good place. It's going to keep accelerating, and we just, you know, it just takes time.
And you know, the Aquarian thing, which is an air sign, it's about mind. I always think about John Lewis saying, "Stay away from slogans." I think that he had said, John Lewis said, "Stay away from slogans."
Yes, agreed.
And defund the police went around to bite people on the back.
Yeah.
I think that people have to get beyond these quick little quips and start really getting into the what you're saying, getting into the work of consciousness raising.
Yes.
I think that's particularly important for Americans, because if you think about Obama was a Leo and Trump has a Leo rising, and that's so American, the individual. But we're moving into the opposite side.
That's right.
Where the group becomes important. There's one thing America hasn't learned yet.
Yep.
In my newsletter, I put that we have not had a president that had either the sun or rising sign other than Leo since Jimmy Carter.
What?
Are you kidding?
Look at it. Look at it. Look at, you know, after Jimmy Carter, maybe Ronald Reagan, because both Bushes had a Leo rising.
Wow.
Right?
Are you
serious?
Whoa.
Both, you know, Clinton and Obama, Leo sun, and then Trump, Leo rising. So it's
we also need more women. We need women to be the president too. Yeah.
But you know, also you have to. I have Leo rising, and I always think of
Won't hold that again.
Me too. I have a Leo rising.
But that places Aquarius on your 7th house, which has to do with significant relationships. And I think you have to remember that there's always the opposite side of the teeter-totter.
Sure. Yeah.
No, there's no bashing of. All I'm saying is that I think there's an archetypal shift taking place. That's
and there also needs to be a balance. You know.
Yes, it has to be a balance.
Yeah. I'd like to say one more thing here about the 1405 kind. There was no greater rise in slavery than after 1405, because in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and we had a huge rise in it. And what we're fighting now is we're fighting a whole thing where there are a lot more dictators gaining power right now. And I think that our hope is that by making this world village that we can get through the web, there's a dark side to the web that all of these different groups can now get themselves together and organize in a way they've never been before. But hopefully with this new Aquarian paradigm, we'll get more and more of the world village involved in working on these issues, so that we can have more of a concept of let's get this under control so we can save ourselves from the climate problem. Because I think the climate problem is going to be so much bigger than anything else that we're going to have to bring the whole world into some way about loving the earth, and from loving the earth, loving each other.
Absolutely agreed. And they're not, one is not more important than the other. You need both. We cannot do one without the other.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, literally.
So, I have some bad news for most of you, I think. If you look at the chart, you'll see that the exact time of the Jupiter Saturn conjunction is 10:21 a.m. in LA, which means after sunrise, so you won't be able to see it.
What time is it at?
10:21 a.m. on December 21st. Okay. So you won't be able to see it. If you want to see it to best appreciate it, you're going to want to look on the evening of the 20th or on the evening of the 21st to the west, short right after the sunset. You're gonna have to watch for the first glimmer or glimpse of Saturn and Jupiter, because they're only 30 degrees ahead of the sun from the sun. So
I think
they
it goes on
won't,
for about 9 days, so you can see it from the 16th through the
yeah,
past the conjunctions.
they will be close.
Yeah.
But the exact, you're just gonna have to hope you can catch it in the evening, because they will set about 2 hours after the sun. Okay. Here's the chart. What I find interesting is that if you take out Chiron, Venus is unaspected. So I don't look at that as being a good omen or necessarily a bad omen. Unaspected planets can be extra powerful, but they can also act out in order to try to get attention that they're not getting because they're not connecting to anybody. So it kind of hangs on how does this play out for us. But it's interesting that you'll see that the sun is at 0 Capricorn at the same time. So you've got major starting events at this point. So it's the beginning of something big, and hopefully it'll be a positive big.
If you notice, all the planets are in a wedge except for Venus.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power.
They're all on the right-hand side, basically, of the nodes except for Venus. And they're in the 4th and 1st quadrants. Yeah, it's the Eastern Hemisphere.
And that's supposed to be the side of initiation of action. When you get someone with a chart and they have a whole lot of planets on the eastern, on this side of the chart, you always think, well, here's a person that's going to be much more aggressive about getting things done, not passive, like if you have it on the other side. That this whole group now of planets are in a situation where we want to move forward. We want energy to take us someplace. And I think this is something that is a whole thing that we're all on Earth starting to realize that this is happening. And I think one of the other things, back to the concept of slavery, which was probably outspoken, but I do think that the problem that we had with the problem of Black Lives Matter, that when we had that thing with Lloyd, the whole globe rebelled. Australia, all of these different places, Europe, parts of India. These people all stood up and said no. And I think that with these planets in this position to bring us to this hemisphere that's rising, I think is going to really be very significant in giving a whole push to the whole growth of the planet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Evolution, human evolution. That's what that was.
Yeah, it was certainly a rise. Well, if you think about it, you look at the industrialized world, the countries that are highly industrialized, with few exceptions, they look upon the United States basically as being a very violent country primarily because of the number of deaths from guns. We're one of the few major industrialized, civilized first world countries that has that kind of a problem. It does happen in other countries, but it's not an issue, and it's not a problem in Europe like it is here, and most of the other countries.
Yep, there's a long history of how that gun violence came to develop. So many, everything is connected. Everything is so connected. Yeah.
We can hope now that perhaps that's something else that will shift with the New Age. Okay.
Well, historically, didn't we have, a lot of indentured servants, a lot of people who had gotten out of prison and had no future in Europe, and they came here. So it's kind of looked at as in our DNA.
Well, Georgia was founded basically as a penal colony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Australia was a penal colony too.
Yeah.
And they don't have the violence level. I think our violence level has a lot to do with not having a social safety net. And we really do feel that we're on our own and nobody's there to catch us if we fall. And I think that causes a panic and a disparate kind of attitude toward others.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has a certain effect on the level of violence.
Yeah.
Trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That trauma is ancestral trauma and the cycles of trauma. The base.
Okay, so something I wanted to else we want to talk about is the concept of the third quarter square. Now we mentioned that Jupiter will make once a square to Uranus next year, and Pluto will make 3. What's important is that it's a third quarter, not a first quarter square. Or the waning square, the shrinking or consolidating, the crisis of consciousness, which falls right into what we talked about with Aquarius and Uranus. Contracting, consolidating, it's time to eliminate that which is no longer working or doesn't serve a purpose. It's awareness of limitations, both personal and other, of scarcity versus surplus and need versus want. Turning away from the old and following the new, reorientation, breaking out of old patterns. Typically, the third quarter occurs about 7 or 8 days after the full moon, and less of the moon's surface will be illuminated as the moon rises later and later each leading night. So if you're trying to figure out, well, which quarter is it? If you're looking at the moon, if the side that's illuminated corresponds with your left side, mirrors your left side, then it's the third quarter. If it mirrors your right side, then it's the first quarter. And on succeeding nights, then more and more of the moon will be illuminated. That's the waxing phase. Then you have the full moon. After that, it starts waning. Less and less of the moon is illuminated, and you get to the third quarter. Pretty good on this? Here we go. Okay. I threw in some keywords here about, so depending upon which mythology source you want to use, and there's a variety of them, basically, Uranus is considered the father of Saturn, who is the father of Jupiter. And now we have this, again, we're dealing with this family issues. Where do we learn our biases from? We learn them from within our family. Much of what we learn and develop in our early life comes from within our family, how our family, what they expose us to and how they behave. So Uranus, we could come up with all kinds of keywords. It's the awakener, the unexpected, the revolutionary. It's out of the box, it's the individual. And typically it's represented in the tarot by the 0 or the Fool card. Not.
Well, why is that?
Well, it's
not the Tower.
The Fool has all the potential in the world. The Fool is all potential, all possibilities of becoming, and there's a naivete. He believes, basically the Fool believes that they can do anything they want to. And that's kind of like a Uranus. And that's why, the Fool or Uranus may sometimes referred to as the teenager of the zodiac. It can go off all of a sudden, 90 degrees from where it was going. Saturn is the teacher. It's about consequences, limitations, responsibility, even fear of change, fear of the unknown. But it's represented by 21, the World card or Universe card, depending on your deck. Jupiter, expansion, benevolent, reward, beliefs, generosity. And the number 10 card, the Wheel of Fortune or Fortune card.
It's also excessive.
Yes, it is. It can go too much. It's too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
Aquarius, I know it's stubborn, detached, imaginative, progressive. It's represented by the star card, number 17 in the major arcana.
That's my favorite.
But again, it's and for me, the star card is about becoming the star, reaching your full potential, being all that you can be. And it's kind of like the old Army slogan: join the Army and be all you can be. It's something else that I thought of earlier when we were talking about stuff. Some of you probably don't remember any of this because you're not old enough. Not a bad thing. Remember back in, what was it, probably the late 50s and 60s, where all of a sudden it came out that television programs and advertisers were using subliminal messaging? Yeah. Guess what? The modern technological age allows that in, however you want to say it, on steroids or in spades. You know, it really takes it up 10 times enough. Because you can slip in images, words, all kinds of things, and you can hide them much better than you could back then when you're dealing with television. So that there may be some of that at play in some of what's going on here with.
At least there's been some stepping forward of the Saturn responsibility on this, with Twitter and different places labeling tweets that are nefarious and baseless.
I personally thought that they weren't really doing enough, by simply putting up a footnote saying that, well, there's evidence that this is not true or this has been disproven according to these sources. Because what you end up what you have then is like, well, this source says this happened, that there was massive voter fraud, and this source says there wasn't. Well, which source am I going to believe? And you pick one and you believe one. Now, if it's been disproven that the world is not flat, then don't let people expound that the world is flat.
Well, but they basically, that by saying there has been evidence that this is not so, or there's been evidence that has disputed this as truth. Yes. That at least opens the door for a person to go, oh, I mean, they can discount it or they can discount the source. But
yeah, and I think that for the great majority of people, they're on one end or the other. Either they fully believe this source or they fully believe the other source. And I don't know if there's something special in the Kool-Aid or what it is, but it's the way it seems to go.
Well, Facebook will send you what you want. I mean, all those people on Fox TV get fed to Fox TV by Facebook, and I'm on the MSNBC, and all I get is all the people that think Trump is crazy. And I think that this whole aspect of you say about what we're being fed and how it comes to us, they've already judged the material to send you what you want to hear, which is
through logarithms. That's the whole thing.
Targeted advertising. They look at what they see what kind of things you look at, what you read, and they just keep giving it to you. Okay, so Jupiter Uranus cycle.
Wait, Jim.
Yes.
Oh, we need to. So this is one of the thing that comes up over and over and over again about proof. And as a scientist, there is this idea that science proves this or doesn't prove this. And the problem there is that is the antithesis of what true science is. So we need to be mindful. I remember back when they said, this is what a cell looked like. But 50 years ago, this is what the cell looked like. And 50 more years ago, this is what the cell looked like. And now today, we can definitively tell you, this is what the cell looks like. I tell you today, it does not look anything like what I saw in my textbook when I was in high school, when I was in college, etc. So we have to be aware that there is no degree of certainty. You prove a null hypothesis. You can't prove something exists. You can say there is an absence of evidence of that. So as just, there is that aspect of it. And the longer we tighten the rein on it is only this and it must only be this, we fall into a lot of the troubles that we have seen. And I'm sure there's astrological aspects of this. This is my Gemini Aquarius, let's follow all the pathways and all the ways.
If you must
bringing this up.
A
reminder, a gentle reminder that it's bigger.
But yes, you're right, because if you look at what's changed in terms of the technology of flight, of the atomic elements, medicine, all the things that have changed so much, things that were considered ironclad gospel, this is how it is, 100, 200, 300 years ago, we've realized aren't. It's like, where did civilization start? Well, now we're getting whole new discoveries that change what we thought we knew. And so that's, yeah, I think that's also part of the Aquarian equation.
You mean the world isn't flat?
Not the last time I looked. Okay.
There's also another thing about Pisces into Aquarius. It's losing the grip of the church on the mind.
Yeah. Well,
there's less and less people that are going to church every week than there are people who are not. There's more of those. And it seems to be moving out in the younger generation also.
But the church was only the biggest example of dogma. We see dogma all around us every day, particularly in advertising.
Amen. Amen.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got to keep moving.
Both political parties too.
I would add that it was the Catholic Church that really validated and authorized the use of slavery, which resulted in slaves being brought to the Western Hemisphere. It probably would have happened anyway, but the Catholic Church blessed the idea for Portugal. It's all right, go to Africa, take slaves because they're not Christians, they're not really people. The idea at that time was if you weren't Christian, if you weren't Catholic, then you were not necessarily, you were only partial human. And unfortunately, that's, was part of the, I think it's in the Constitution or something, but yes, okay. So Jupiter-Uranus cycles from conjunction to conjunction, they take about 13.5 years. The current cycle began with the triple conjunction, which was on June 8th of 2010, September 18th, and then last on January 4th of 2011. Their first quarter square occurred also 3 times, August 21st of 13, April 20th of 14. During that period of time, there were 3 exact squares. They had 3 exact oppositions between December 26th of 2016 and September 27th of 2017, but there will only be 1 third quarter square. So if you think in terms of cycles, think in terms of what did you start? What started in 2010, basically 2011.
The rise of Trump.
Yeah. And then it started action from 13, 14, it began to manifest even more with the opposition. He was elected. Their next cycle begins with their one-hit conjunction of April 20th of 2024. So next year, Jupiter is going to speed through Aquarius into Pisces, where he will station retrograde and return to Aquarius. And then after stationing direct, Jupiter returns to Pisces at the end of 21 at 0 Pisces.
That's when Uranus will oppose Mercury, will oppose Biden's Mercury.
Okay. Yeah. Because Uranus is in early Taurus, as I said, this is a one-time square. Now with Saturn, it's a different story. Here's the chart for the first and only Jupiter square Uranus, which occurs on January 17th, 3 days before the inauguration. Notice that we have, Mars is less than 1.5 degrees from conjuncting Uranus. By this point, Jupiter and Saturn are about 3 degrees apart. The sun has crossed over Pluto. Notice here we see the nodes, and here are all the planets. All the planets are in the southern half of the chart. They're above the horizon, and they're contained within the nodes. Now, if we had another couple hours, we could talk about that. the fact that they're contained within the nodes, but we ain't going there today because we don't have that kind of time. It crossed my mind, but I figured we wouldn't have time for that. So this is kind of, this is setting things up for Inauguration Day. So it's like, what is happening? I mean, there was a big rally in DC for Trump and for taking action to stop the steal. So is there a potential that his supporters may do something extreme? Not en masse, probably, but some segments of them certainly might.
Stand back and stand by. Remember that?
Yeah, there will no doubt be heightened security for the inauguration, even though it's going to be a virtual one. At least Trump can claim that he had more people physically at his inauguration than Biden will, but
oh boy,
Good one.
you do. Yeah, you still had a whole lot less than everybody before you.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So here is the inauguration chart. Notice we have no planets retrograde.
Ooh, Mars conjunct Uranus. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes, almost exact. 5 minutes of arc.
Ooh.
And the moon is breathing right down on them, and it's sitting on. Let's see, it's trining Trump's ascendant. Saturn, Jupiter are a little over, not quite 3.5 degrees apart. We see the sun at 0 Aquarius. Again, everybody's contained.
Yes, within the nodes. And what about when the sun progresses up to 6 degrees?
And squares Uranus?
Yes. Because the sun represents, in a mundane chart, represents the president.
Yeah.
Think of it as squares can be stabilizing as well.
Yeah. With that Mars Uranus conjunction hiding in the 12th house, are there secret enemies somewhere that may come out and try to put a major monkey wrench into this?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time that hackers have hacked into something and disrupted it. Might they try to disrupt the virtual inauguration?
Well, there was a Mars square Uranus in Taurus when Kennedy was assassinated.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember all this stuff.
What else we got coming up? Oh, here's the new moon for February 11th. I put that in because that's the Chinese New Year. We're going into the year of the ox next year.
Everything
I'm
is
going to just zip through these. Notice everybody's still contained within the nodes for this event. I'm jumping through theyese charts. They'll all be on the.
What do you think that it means that everything's contained between the nodes?
Well, let me see if I can summarize it. If you look at the nodes and consider how they move. So here's the north node. The north node is the head of the dragon. What does the head of the dragon do? It consumes. What's going to happen? The dragon is going to go this way, and it's going to consume Mars, and then Uranus, and Chiron, and Neptune, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. So all of this is going to get consumed by the north node, which, from a positive perspective, allows for a period of great gain and expansion of knowledge and accomplishments. On the negative side, it can be a curtailment of their energy. It can. In Vedic astrology, there's a term for it called Sarpa Yoga, and which basically is the black snake of time, and generally is considered somewhat inauspicious. But you're looking at a period of 8 years
Yeah, and I think that has to do with the fact that it's fated. It's going to fold out the way it's supposed to go.
Yes, it is fated. That's another aspect of containment within the nodes. If you think of the nodes from a karmic perspective, when everything is between the nodes, it becomes more fated. In this case, if you look at it, well, are they between the north node and the south node, or between the south node and the north node? In this case, they happen to be between the north node and the south node. And you can look at it from two different perspectives. One is how the nodes move, because the north node will conjunct all of those points before the south node does, or you look at how the planets move, and they will all cross the north node before they get around and cross the south node.
Right. In the 10th house up there, the conjunctions there with Jupiter and Venus, and Mercury close by Venus, and the sun and the luminaries there, all in Aquarius.
Yeah.
And I know it's in retrograde, but still, that's in the 10th house. That feels really positive to me. And I don't know, maybe I'm just an optimist, and I do try to look at the positive trend, but that looks really hopeful to me.
Yeah, I would agree that it does certainly look hopeful. You've got that new moon in Aquarius in the 10th house is a good sign. And this chart is for LA, so yeah, it certainly hints at or implies the potential for a good opt year for those who are willing to work hard and put in the time and effort.
All the planets are above the horizon. All the planets are above the horizon. I think everything's going to be put up front. Everything's up there. I mean, all the cards are on the table at this point, and we have to move on.
Yeah. Yay.
Mm-hmm. We hope so. Okay, it's after 2, so I'm going to just quick whip through these other charts. The other charts that are here, here's a little bit about the year of it's a metal oct year. So anybody who's going to be 60 next year after the 12th, it will be the return of your birth year end element. So we're going to be looking at, here's the first Saturn Uranus square, which is on February 17th. We see that, all the planets are still contained.
Mm-hmm.
Because the nodes move slowly and the planets move slowly, the only planet that's going to get out of that is the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So once a month for half a month, it'll be, everybody but the moon will be in there. Then the moon moves in and it goes and repeats. Saturn will make 3 third quarter crisis of consciousness squares to Uranus in 21, February 17th, June 14th, and December 23rd. Their cycle began with their triple conjunction in Sagittarius, February 12th to the October 18th, 1988. The 3 first quarter crisis of action squares were Taurus Aquarius from July 17th of 99 to May 13th of 2000. Their single conjunction will be June 28th, 2032 at 28 Gemini. So what do we got here? Oh, Neptune. Here's the other biggie next year that most people perhaps haven't thought about, and that is transiting Neptune opposing the U.S. Neptune. Happens first time on May 1st. May Day. It's an emergency, Paul. Hope not. But it has Venus and Mars out of bounds. North. Notice the second opposition occurs on August 21st, and the third exact opposition will be March 1st of 2022, which is just after the USA's first Pluto return of February 20th. There's a total lunar eclipse on May 26th. There's a solar annular eclipse on June 10th. Series 5, this is from Brady's Book of the Lark about that one. November 19th brings us a partial lunar eclipse, and December 3rd brings us another total solar eclipse. This one is from Series 5 South. And here's what Bernadette Brady had to say about it. These charts compare end of year 2020 with end of year 2021. And here again, we see that here and for this year, it ends with all the planets except the moon contained between the nodes. But 21 ends with everybody between the nodes. So it looks like fate will have its way with us at least probably through 2021. What else? A couple of references. If Bernadette Brady's Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark. If you're interested in eclipses, if you buy a book, buy that one, because it gives you more information than any other book, though I don't necessarily agree with everything she says. And some of the keywords, courtesy of Marianne Marks, Joan McKeever's The Only Way to Learn Astrology, Volume 1, Basic Principles. Wrapping up. Again, I'll make a PDF file of the slideshow, everything, and that will be posted to our Facebook page where you can download it. And I'll send a link to the video recording will also be posted there. The link to the video will also be sent out to everybody in the meetup group and anybody else who wants it that doesn't have access to either or, because you want to drop me an email and I will send it to you. There's our website for our Facebook group, the Santa Monica Astrology Meetup group. Join us. It's not particularly, we don't have that many members yet, and it's not all that active yet, but it's growing. And I said you can request the files from me, jimmyeddie@hotmail.com. That's underscore Jimmy_Eddie. My middle name is Edward after my uncle Pete. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or requests, please email Spencer, or you can email me too. Not done yet. Thank you for joining us today and for all your continued support through the years. Wishing you all a safe, happy holiday season. Stay well. We want to see you next year. Our next meetup is Sunday, January 10th, 2021, 12 p.m.
I always enjoy it.
Any last minute questions, comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Yes, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to kind of give a little bit of a push with the Facebook group. Just we welcome you. You will see some questions when you hopefully you will see the questions. If you don't see the questions, try again or send a message or check your message request folder. But you should see questions that say, hi, how'd you hear about us? Who did you meet?
Yes.
And that's just to help us cut down on, every troll and their mother coming in. We do, we're not highly monitored. We do just ask that everybody, be adult and kind and not post excessively about something other than what we have on topic. But we also want to really encourage you guys to post in there. Please, let's start discussions. Let's build more connection. So, sound good?
Sounds good. Yes.
Okay. This may not be the time to bring it up because I do want to thank you all for everything you do and the end of the year and the holidays. But I don't know. Does anybody remember Frankie Lennon?
Yeah.
Did you realize that she passed away?
No.
I got a message on my voicemail and I was looking through old voicemail messages. She seems to have died on September 30th from a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I got the message in October and somehow it went down the voicemails, but I just wanted to let you know in case anybody knew her or whatever, send whatever you do.
No, I had not heard that at all.
Yeah. And for some reason I was on her contact list. I used to give her rides a lot to another organization. And thank you so much, especially Jim and Spencer and everybody who contributes to this. It's been wonderful and a very strange year, but great to get on, on Zoom with you guys. And I guess we'll see you in 2020.
Really appreciate all of you and your support. Hang on, I want to do one more thing, a quick share. Here it is. Okay. So, okay, so here's my list of the major, and I may add something to it before I get it posted, but the major astrological events of 2021. I've got planets going in and out of bounds, and there will be periods when there will be 3 planets out of bounds at the same time. Probably not a good sign. Things could be pretty chaotic at that time. I've got all of, I think I've got all of the, the Jupiter, square Uranus, and what is it? It's 5 pages, double spaced. So Mars is going to be going out of bounds next year. Venus, Mercury, Moon all go out of bounds. We've got moon wobbles coming. So in fact, we're in a moon wobble right now, just in case you're wondering about the chaos. Moon wobbles basically are periods when there are more chaotic events, typically of a more natural type disasters and the like. So yeah, it's kind of like be prepared, be cautious, take care, and all those fun things. Spencer, any wise words for the wrap up here?
The only thing I want to say is I want to thank Jim for being such a super Virgo in the preparation for all these notes. We'd meet and have a discussion, then he'd come back with a notebook full.
Yeah.
And I think that the key thing about how great he is he made this 5-page thing of all the things coming up, including out of bounds, which I think is really, and you look around on any of the other ephemeris people and they're not offering the out of bounds general statement. So I just want, let's give Jim a big hand here because he really did a lot of work and I really appreciate it.
Hey, lockdown's good for something, right?
Hey, happy holiday to everybody. I have to leave, but I enjoyed it so much.
Yes. Okay. So we are going to.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you all for showing up again. Thank you to the new people for your coming the first time, and I hope to see you again and again and again. We do this second Sunday of every month, and we'll figure out what we're doing ahead of time. And okay, well, thank you all. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Take care. Stay safe.
Peace out, Spencer.
Okay, I'll get out of here. Oops.
All right, I'm ending it and stopping the recording. Stop recording.